What is up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? My name is Jade, and the audio is playing up a little bit, and I'm joined today by my good friend and collaborator. How do you like that word, Simon? Collaborator, Simon Anderson. How are you doing?
Tēnā koutou katoa, kia ora, and good evening to you, Jade, and everybody at home. Collaborator, that's a pretty big privilege, I guess. Guest on call or bored and lonely individual who likes to jump on stream and talk nonsense. That's a fitting title, but collaborator, I don't know if I could have that responsibility, but happy to take it.
Resident guest, man in the third chair. I've heard lots of terms for this role, but super excited to have Simon along for the reboot of the stream. It goes without saying that over the lockdown it's been really difficult for me to commit to the live streams, but I will say that I'm extremely privileged to be able to say that I'm busy, and I don't want that to get lost on anyone. The fact that I am busy is really great. We also have my good friend and lovely assistant, Hannah.
Hi, everybody.
Hannah, how are you doing tonight?
Fabulous, thanks. Yeah, and I've been really well, been missing the stream, but we've been super busy.
Are you expecting that Simon and I are going to disagree to a painful level tonight on all these news stories we're about to discuss?
No. No, there might be some healthy debates and healthy discussions, but not complete disagreement.
Before we get into the business or the discussion or the podcast, whatever you want to call it, Simon, I said this right before we came on stream, actually. I've never actually given you the opportunity for you to introduce yourself to my community. You've just kind of been here, come on, and left again. So I think it's highly appropriate at this stage just to give you the platform, just to introduce yourself to everybody. Who are you? Why do you exist? And what matters to you?
All right, I guess it's my turn then, eh? So, if you've been to a few of the live streams or watched some of the ones that I've been a part of, you'd know possibly that Jade and I have worked together in the past, but let's just go back a little bit further than that. So why do I exist? Well, I mean, I'm not really to give the birds and the bees talk on stream, but my parents at some point in the 90s managed to conceive myself, and so that is how I've came to be. I grew up in Whangaparaoa on the peninsula, which is just north of Auckland, spent my whole early life there until I moved out a few years ago, but have maintained a pretty close tie to the region. I guess made it through high school, involving myself in lots of sports and extracurricular activities, played in a rock band, played and coached a lot of sports, and spent a lot of time near or in the water, mainly the salted variety. My dad instilled a love of surfing in all of us, but I think I've been the one that's carried it on the most. I mean, I still go surfing with my old man. I did just last weekend as well, so I mean, surfing's a big passion of mine. Once I finished school, I made it into Auckland University, did a commerce degree, came out with majors in information systems and commercial law. While I was at university, I got a really awesome internship through a regular at the cafe I worked at. We just had a conversation about coffee cards and wishing that they'd be in a digital version in an app. And I said, oh, if you need help, I'd love to help you design it. And he goes, he's an old Canadian guy. He's, oh, are you interested in computers, are you? And I was like, yeah, I love them. And then he hands me his email address. He says, sends me a CV. And turns out he was the CEO of a massive international IT company that worked for governments all over the world. And this company built the website that the company's office operates on, and then they sell that to governments and organizations all around the world. So that was where I started my professional career as an intern tester there, and they gave me a full-time position when my studies finished.
That is
and
an amazing story. Like that. What is fate? What is chance? That is amazing, Simon. I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was lovely, an amazing dude. He just would come in every Sunday with his wife, and they would have breakfast with a couple of their friends. And when you serve the same people every weekend, you end up having conversations with them and yarning with them. You remember what they order every time for their coffee and their meal, and it was awesome. This guy, I don't know, just saw something in me and realized that I was good value, and gave me the opportunity, and I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am now if it wasn't for that initial conversation over the counter. It's crazy, really.
That's
Awesome.
so cool.
And we don't need to get too specific, but you're also now working in the social services sector.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a complete change of direction career-wise from a pretty privatized IT company into the world of public services, and then more specifically into the world of disability. That is a whole community that you need to understand from top to bottom how it operates. Otherwise, you just can't work effectively at all, and you just end up becoming another cog in the machine. Like, you and I have had many discussions online and offline about what we can do to change, and the keywords transform what there is already. And if you just operate within the bounds of your job, of what you're there to do, then you're never going to do anything but perpetuate what already is happening.
I sense that you're pretty keen to make a difference, though. I guess that's why you and I kind of, may I say, gelled. Why we seem to work really well together.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just saw you as somebody I could use, right? As a way to understand.
Somebody
I saw this
I could
guy's...
use. That's a clippable moment right there.
Yeah, in the most polite way possible. It is the biggest compliment I could give you. Is I saw you with, years of experience, personally and obviously professionally, and someone who's involved at the government level and at the ground floor level in businesses and that support people directly. So I just thought, what's the point in trying to do this on my own, and when I could just keep asking you annoying questions?
And I tell you what, they're never annoying. But I guess but I guess where it comes to you being on here, because the Jade Farrar show on Twitch is quite separate from my policy work. But I guess why I really enjoy having you on is because we're much more than our jobs, and we certainly have opinions, and dare I say, in a couple of places we may differ. And it's really interesting because I always find that we're working towards the same thing, but we don't necessarily agree on how to get there. Would that be a fair summation?
Yeah, I mean, we're both working towards a utopian future society where everybody's happy, and some of the issues that we both identify are present now aren't there in the future. Yeah, the way we get there or how it looks may differ slightly, but yeah, I guess that's where we can find common ground. We notice that what is happening around us is wrong or is shit, and we can do what we can to make a difference.
So just to let everybody at home know the sort of framework for tonight's stream, and I don't actually know how long we'll be here. We'll be here as long as it's interesting, I suppose. But what happened overnight was I sent Simon a bunch of links, news stories that I'd be interested in talking about, and Hannah was the producer for this one, so she really helped me find things that we could really unpack and discuss. But before that, I told Simon, as we were coming on, I do have a question of the day. Now, this is for everybody at home and you as well, Simon. You as well, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm going to come to you in a minute. But for today, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to pose the question, are you entitled to anything? Leave your comments in the chat. Let me know what you think about the question of the day. Do you think you are ever entitled to anything? And with that, we're gonna, let me see if I can find the right scene, and we're gonna come back to Simon. Simon?
Are we entitled to anything?
Anything. Are we entitled
Yes.
to anything?
Yes.
Why?
I believe, excuse me, I believe in this universe, if you are a conscious entity, you are entitled to continue to be a living conscious entity until you die of your own failings of your body biologically. I think you are entitled to live until you pass on naturally. That is probably maybe the only thing you're entitled to.
So
I guess you're entitled to an opportunity to make your own life. But that's, even saying that, I don't know if I agree with it. But I definitely agree with what I said originally, that you are entitled to live your whole life.
that's really interesting, and I'm noticing a few frame drops, so let me know in the chat if it gets too unbearable and I'll make some changes. But that's really interesting to me, because if you're a terrorist and you, let's say you were responsible for the death of like 5,000 people, let's just pull a number out of a hat here. Are you entitled to live your whole life?
Yeah, you just weren't given the opportunity. Like, being entitled to something doesn't mean it's guaranteed, does it? I mean, unless there's a definition of entitled.
That's really interesting. So that's probably a secondary question for me. Yeah, you know, just because you're entitled doesn't mean it's guaranteed. I think it'll come to Hannah now, and full disclosure, Simon, Hannah got a preview, and we basically had a tussle over this one already. So Hannah, are you entitled to anything?
So my initial response is no, and my response is no because it is you as a person will create and grow and foster your development in life. So starting from a child, it's about support from your parents, and I think as an adult you're not entitled to money, you're not entitled to love, you're not entitled to anything as such. It's by your own virtue how your life unfolds, really, and develops and progresses.
Because there are some people out there that would say that even unborn children aren't entitled to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just unpacking what Simon said about being entitled to live your life. I'm actually so amazed that that's the phrase you use, Simon, because of the whole pro-life, pro-choice argument. Because I know we've had that conversation before. So for me, I'm still genuinely undecided. Really would like to hear from the chat on this one. It's not so much to arrive at a definitive answer, but I really would like to collect the range of views on that question, because when I thought of it, I actually thought it was incredibly mind-blowing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I mean, just for my own curiosity, I googled what the definition of entitlement is, because I always felt, because that's one of the biggest things with arguments that people get into, is that you talk about a subject and then the two people that are in the argument have different definitions of what they're arguing over. And if you just confirmed what the premise of the discussion was, then maybe you might see it eye to eye. So the definition of entitlement, the fact of having a right to something. So an entitlement is a fact that you have a right to it. So yeah, you have a right to life.
And I agree with you,
You have to
Simon,
live your
in the
life.
sense of you've got a right to life, but it's in that life, are you entitled to money? Are you entitled to love? Are you entitled to success? Are you entitled to a family? Entitled to have a family? I think that's why I say no. I think entitled to life, yes. Entitled to the life you live, that's where I differ.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the pro-life, pro-choice discussion, just because I know that's it's kind of sitting on the side of this argument that we're having. It's tough because if you're looking at a person who is pregnant but made the decision that they can't support that life, or that they believe that life will suffer if it is brought into this world, I would like to give that person that opportunity to make that call for themselves, but I would also like for the support, or sufficient support enabled around that person to care for that life if they choose to bring it in, because right now I don't think there's enough support for people who get pregnant or have kids and that can't support them properly once they have them.
Yeah.
Really interesting. But without further ado, I think I stabilized the frame rate issues for now. Sorry for everybody at home that might have been having difficulty hearing us. Hopefully you're not anymore. So Simon, just to let you know, we were having some issues, but I think I cleared it up. Let us know in the chat if you can finally hear us. But without further ado, let's move to the first story of the day. And Simon, I'm going to head straight to the call for government to provide a flat fair disability allowance. And there's nothing to show on screen. This is a radio report, so I'll play it now. Simon's got secondary audio. He'll be able to hear where we're up to, and we'll discuss it later. We welcome your comments in the chat.
Now, the latest out of Japan this morning is that the Coast Guard will resume searching today, and an aircraft and 2 patrol boats will be included in that search. It's now 17 minutes to 8.
Disabled Pacifica people getting an allowance that's meant to help them with their extra costs are getting less than half that of Pākehā recipients. Official data going back 10 years shows persistent inequity in median disability allowance payments between Pākehā and Māori and Pacifica. And to fix that, disability advocates say the allowance needs to be paid at a flat rate. Here's our social issues reporter, Sarah Robson.
The disability allowance is a weekly payment of up to $65 to help people with regular ongoing costs because of a disability. It can cover things like visits to the doctor, medicines, extra clothing or travel. But to claim it, people must provide their receipts and get the costs verified by their doctor. The Chief Executive of CCS Disability Action, David Matthews, says that process is too onerous.
It requires applicants to go through a whole series of hoops, and we actually think it becomes too hard for many people. And I think that gets reflected in the figures that get presented.
Official figures from the Ministry of Social Development, obtained by CCS Disability Action, show that in the March 2020 quarter, the median amount paid to Pākehā recipients of the disability allowance was close to $14 a week. But for Māori, the amount was just under $10, and for Pacifica, it was just above $6. That may sound small, but over the course of a year, that means Pākehā received just over $700, while Pacifica get about $320. Those disparities are consistent across 10 years of data, so that can mean a difference of thousands of dollars. Kramer Hoflich is a Pacific disability advocate. He says the figures are shocking, but not surprising.
It's been like that for a while, where the Pacific community has been asking for change in this and for an increase in benefit money or around disability support. So that was like no surprise to me seeing it, because we are definitely not accessing the full amount that we're meant to be.
Kramer Hoflich says many Pacific people don't know they're entitled to extra help or how to access it. Mr. Hoflich became disabled after an accident at the age of 15, so his parents handled his benefits and allowances. Like many other Pacific families, he says they were grateful for whatever support they were able to get, even if it wasn't enough.
We knew we needed more, but we were too afraid to go back, even though I said, I'm going to go back. But, of course, my parents were going, no, do not go back, because what happens if you go? You might accidentally lose what they're giving you, so just be thankful for what you're getting.
Jonathan Tautari is a pō arahi with CCS Disability Action, working with Māori whānau in Auckland and Northland. He says the support people get can depend on the staff member they see at the Ministry of Social Development. He helped a mother recently who was told by one person she couldn't claim transport costs for her disabled child, but was told by another person she could.
So there you have two separate understandings by MSC staff, and it really has a huge impact on somebody's ability to be supported.
In a statement, Kay Reid from the Ministry of Social Development said the disparities across ethnic groups are concerning. The ministry can't pinpoint exactly why Pākehā are claiming more than Māori and Pacific, but it will be looking at what more it can do to ensure people are aware of the allowance and how to claim it. David Matthews says the way to do that is to pay the disability allowance at a flat rate, provided it's confirmed you have a disability.
And then if you have extra needs, there are some top-ups to that flat rate. But if we started with a flat rate entry point for all disabled people, then we would remove those initial set of hoops that everybody goes through, which we think are having a negative effect.
The Social Development Minister, Carmel Sepuloni, says she's asked her ministry to look at whether a flat rate can be applied fairly. Mō te hōtaka o te ata, ko Sarah Robson, aho.
So, I suppose I'll go first. I was really keen to get this story on the ballot for tonight, because that is by far the biggest piece of racist claptrap that I have ever heard by the media in reference to people with disabilities. I think, you know, just because Māori and Pacifica are accessing some kind of, I think you corrected me earlier today, it was $69 the maximum, $65 maximum allowance. So we're saying that it's racist because they're not accessing it. What if Māori and Pacific families prefer to support their own? What if they feel as if the Anglo-Saxon social system that we live in does not meet their needs, so why bother? It doesn't mean that it's racist. I think that it is a good thing if you don't have to access everything social services have to offer. Why is there always an expectation that you know disabled people must go to the government for help? Really keen on your response, Simon, and we'll have a go.
Yeah, your point I didn't consider, which I really should have after hearing the fact that, what if they don't want to access that? And I was like, yeah, it's a fair point. There's probably some truth to that. My main takeaway from that article is that I did some research on how you actually engage with this allowance, and it's terrible. Like you need to set yourself like up in their online portal, and then for any allowance that you receive, you have to provide receipts and proof of purchase up front, and then receive the funding afterwards. Like you need to prove that you've spent the money to then receive it back, which is like there's so many factors in that process that I've just talked about then that would limit the interaction of that funding on the Pacifica and Māori and minority groups. Some of the things that I wrote down here is things like technology access, time availability, literacy. All of those things are barriers to accessing that and receiving that funding. Like, you've got to have access to technology, the time to go through that arduous process, and the ability to use the tools and understand the process to get a maximum of $65 a week.
Yeah.
These people are working 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
Like making minimum wage. What the fuck is $65 going to do a week extra? It's like nothing. So where I think that maybe the funding type is racist is that if you believe that the factors that I've just talked about in terms of access to technology, literacy, education, and employment, if those socioeconomic factors are worse off for those groups based on racist laws and the institutions that exist in this country, meaning that groups like Māori and Pacifica end up in a situation where they can't access the funding because the world around them has made it harder for them to exist. And how that would happen is if things like education, housing, employment, public infrastructure, community support, all that stuff is worse off or non-existent in minority-dominated areas, which I think is partly true. So I think in some ways, because of the way the funding is built and how you access it, it is racist because of it exists in a racist system to some degree, right? Like obviously there is personal responsibility, and if you really try hard enough or apply yourself properly, there is the ability to overcome all of those issues. But it just doesn't override the fact that if you live in a street surrounded by gang members in a Decile 1 community where the teachers are rubbish and your school is leaking sewage, the hospital next to you is leaking sewage through the walls, like that kind of stuff, your ability to engage with a measly $65 a week funding is going to be diminished.
And for me, there's a question of who's it for. So you outlined, and thank you for bringing the detail to the stream, that you actually have to provide receipts. So who's the support actually for? Because an argument could be made, and this sounds counter to my position, but it's actually not. If this disability allowance is really about helping those that need extra support, then why do they have to pay for it first? Why would they come to you if they could pay for it first?
Yeah, no, completely. So, I completely agree with you with your point and what you're saying. It is a terrible system. So a few points that I also picked up from the article was, David Matthews is saying, well, there should be a base amount, and then if anyone has costs on top, it should be looked at. Well,
I suppose that's an issue that we haven't touched on. Do you support the flat rate?
No, so what I'm trying to explain about it is the fact is you have a flat rate, and then you're going to have the same situation of, he said that you've got to, anyone who has a stronger need, has more needs, have to prove it. So you have to go and prove it again. And that is the situation right now. You've got to prove your need. So, yes, maybe a flat rate might be beneficial for those who are actually applying for it. But I do know from actually having conversations with people, the disparity, as that was said, between the people that work there, that actually approve these, the understanding of what they can approve and what they can't, and this will then determine what a person will get. It will also determine what they will tell somebody that they can get, and then that affects it. And then it also depends on to get this approved. Like, yes, you've got to prove your costs, but it's got to be signed off by a doctor. So if you go to your doctor and your doctor's helping you to do it in the first instance, they may not know anything about the disability allowance and maybe what can and can't be approved, or
okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
what also could be put on there, because I've heard of people putting some extreme things on there, or people not knowing that they could put things on there, so they don't mention it. But that's exactly right, Simon. How do people afford things in the first place? That is a ridiculous system.
That raises the question of who's it for, really. I just don't get it. And Matt, I'm a person that, I've said this before on stream, I don't actually believe racism exists. I know this is a bit of a point for Simon, but I will say that this reporter was trying to be racist.
Yes, and I disagree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, Simon. There's different disparities that would have led to different people. Either they decide not to take up this allowance, they either don't know what they can put on the allowance, or of course the factor of technology and literacy is a factor for them to be able to even apply for it. So in that sense, yes, I would support a flat rate, but right now what I also know is if you have a higher how do I say this? If you have costs that are higher than $65 a week, they will basically say to you, That's it, sorry. Doesn't matter if your costs are $65, $14, or if they're $200 a week for your disability, sorry, all we're giving you is $65.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, last point from me, and then, I'll give Simon the last word on this story before we move on to the next one. But I think we need to be having bigger, more strategic conversations.
Yeah.
I got my facts wrong yesterday. I was in a meeting and I said, why are we arguing about $14? It's not $14, it's $65, and the median amount that people were gaining was $14. But I just think we need to be having bigger, more strategic conversations, getting disabled people into work, giving them genuine autonomy, genuine choice and control over their lives, and not faffing around with this, because you could spend half your week trying to apply for the $65.
Yes.
A return on investment? I don't think so. Simon, last word.
Yeah, just looking online about the purpose of the funding. So it says disability allowance is a weekly payment for people who have regular ongoing costs because of a disability, such as visits to the doctor or hospital, medicines, extra clothing, or travel. Right, yeah. It's handled in the wrong way.
Yep.
This could be scrapped, and like you're saying, we need bigger, broader conversations. This is a prime example of something that could just be done away with if you gave people the autonomy to tell you what they needed and what they wanted. Like, it's just silly. And yeah, like you said, people couldn't afford to access this funding, because if you assign the value of their time to what they earn in a job, the
Yeah.
time it takes to go through this process, it almost is a negative effect on your weekly earnings. Like, if you're taking a few hours out of your week to get this funding, chances are it's not even worth an hour of your time.
Who wants a negative return on investment? No one.
People who buy cars.
Oh, well, actually, you're not wrong there. We'll
Yeah.
give you that. That's one where we agree, Simon. That's one where we agree. Yeah, negative return on investment. Get it. Okay, so we're gonna move straight into the next story now. This one's a video, so I am gonna be able to have it up on screen. There was an article that goes with it that Simon's been able to have a look at. I'm just gonna make sure that you guys can see what I see, and then I'll play the video. If you're in the chat, welcome to the stream. If this is your first time, my name is Jade, and I'm tearing up the news. Uh-oh. This is just gonna have an ad for a minute. I'll put that on mute in case I get copyrighted or whatever. Here we go.
I was
So
going to say, what's Donald Trump's word
What
for...
I've been through to get residency was a huge test of resilience, patience, perseverance. I had the residency denied twice. I've been to the Immigration and Protection Tribunal twice as well. I've had to leave unlawfully for 6 months while I was waiting the decision, my appeal against deportation. And it wasn't for the support of my family, my friends, and a huge community that backed me up, I wouldn't be here today. I of course, I'm very happy, and I think it's a victory after 7 years and 8 months battling immigration. But for me, it's a partial victory, because going through what I've been through was to fight against the system that discriminates was the hardest thing I have ever endured in my life. It was harder than becoming paraplegic, because there was nothing that I would do will prove that, look, I can contribute. And when you fight in the system, there's no person, it's something that's intangible. So I don't want to see other people going through what I've been through. The medical waiver process is dehumanizing, is humiliating, it's unfair, So when they assessing the medical waiver, one of the things they will take into account is your potential contribution to the country, right? I had evidence of my career back in Brazil in the inclusion and communication sector. But imagine how a kid with a disability is going to prove her potential contribution to the country. It's just a kid forming an identity. So you're already setting up that person for failure. And the message that you're saying as well to other kids with disability here in New Zealand is that we don't want more of your kind because you were burdened. So The policy that was preventing me to get residency to stay in New Zealand is the Acceptable Standard of Health, policy A4.10, and specifically A4.10.1. They have a list of conditions that are deemed to impose high cost to the health system. So paraplegia and immune disorders, severe immune disorders are listed, and then paraplegia can have lupus.
So that was a report from Stuff, and I just want to remind myself of the name of that person. I'm gonna mess this up. Excuse me. I'm gonna mess this up each ways. Juliana Carvalho is what I'm gonna say. Do you have a second opinion on that last name, Simon?
I think the L and H is like a Carvalho.
Carvalho.
Yeah, Carvalho. I think so.
Juliana Carvalho. We have Tandy NZ in the chat. I think you know them, don't you, Simon?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Tandy.
Potentially a relation.
Yeah, cool. He reckons you're handsome. Did you pay for that one?
I think he's got his quality set to like 360p or something.
Awesome. So, I lead out last time, so I think I'm gonna let you lead out on this one, Simon.
Yeah.
What's your take? And remembering, I'm gonna just throw it up there again. Our question of the day: are you entitled to anything? So with that in mind, I'll throw it back to you, Simon.
I think it's a tough situation to be in for anybody and for both sides of the conversation. What I came away from that article with is that she was very lucky in that she could demonstrate her ability to be a constructive member of society. But there is a conversation on the side of that as whether that's a necessary part of being in a country. Is can you productively participate in that society? Does that give you entry? Like there's a conversation for people who are born here, and then there's for people who would like to immigrate here. Like she applied through the skilled immigrants category, and medical condition shouldn't really be a factor in it. And that was the outcome I saw in reading it, is that the immigration minister basically ruled out that clause in assessing her case. So it was an individual win, and she said that she's not happy until she gets change for everybody, because she said in that video that was the hardest thing she's ever had to do, was fight the system. So
are you happy that Juliana's here?
I guess so. With the facts that I know, I'm assuming she is working and paying taxes and contributing. So yeah, I'm happy to have her.
So I'll save you from that very intense question and just say, yeah, I'm not happy she's here. Actually, I'm not happy she's here, because if she was such an asset, then go be an asset for your own country. Yeah. I don't really get it. Like I've seen a lot of her media. She did this whole big social justice thing about sit down and learn about a disabled person in the AET Square, and she's been crying in all sorts of media. The reason why I say what I say is that I don't think it's anybody's right to ever immigrate anywhere. we talked about entitlement earlier in the show and just before as well. Like, your birthright, fine. You might call it a birthright. Some countries are really cracking down on that concept too, granted. But I think where you're from and where your parents are from is where you belong.
Yeah.
And if you are so lucky to immigrate, that is a privilege, and not to be expected at all by anyone. We have a lot of people in the chat that we talk to from the States. I visited the States when I was younger. I like the States and I'd like to go back, and who knows, I might want to immigrate there, but I would never expect to be accepted into the States as a citizen. I would never accept it. It's the most arrogant thing I've ever seen from this lady to just fight for 7 years and wriggle her way through our immigration system to get her residency. It's gross. I don't like it. And actually, I think long term it actually makes disabled people that want to immigrate here look bad, because they're always going to point at Juliana and say, well, here comes another one. This is going to be a handful, so we better wrap it up quick. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how to unpack and respond. I mean, I guess you've probably got more skin in the game than I do. I mean, I'm just observing. One thing that I did write down in comment, I guess it kind of relates to what you've been saying, is that hundreds, if not thousands, of people come into our country and cost the country more than she ever will, and be completely able-bodied, whether it's through being a criminal and going through legal costs and then living in prison for tens of years, or whether they get injured like while they're here and cost us a whole lifetime of supporting them as an individual. So it's like, I don't know if it's a fair comparison to make, because it's, you know, it's just a what about argument. You know, what about this? If this is already happening, we should address things in a singularity. But it's like, if I made the comparison to, you know, other parts of this, of immigration, where we have people coming in droves, and some of them causing, you know, a negative return on investment, to use the term. Her case doesn't seem so severe as the way as you see it, maybe.
What I was going to say is, which relates to what you actually said, Simon, is actually, I think we've got a wider immigration problem, because we have people come to a country who are asylum seekers, and then end up staying on the social benefit, social housing for the rest of their life. Now, asylum, that is supposed to be the country closest to yours, that is the safest. Now we're down the bottom of the world, so why are we having people arrive to our country, and then end up costing us money for the rest of their lives? I think that's a problem with immigration. I do think that there should have been, yes, she's put a big influence on her disability, and, you know, having a disability, I understand the struggles, but going to different places, I would not expect her to have residency, and I think that's the thing, is it's been pointed out, you know, somebody could get residency if they did not cost the country as much as she will do, and that's the question. And then how she ended up being able to get through it is because of all her protests, and then emailing the the former immigration minister and saying, "You're going to kill me if you send me back to Brazil. COVID-19 will kill me." I think that is.
I don't accept that as a premise, because she's been at she said so in the story. It is a privilege to be able to enter any country at any time, regardless of what it is. I don't see New Zealand as this big elite thing where you're lucky to come here. I think that lens applies across the board. If I go to Melbourne and hang out in Melbourne and have a good time in Melbourne, it's a privilege to be there.
Yeah.
I'm not from Australia.
Yeah.
And I just don't get it. This story in particular makes me embarrassed to be disabled, quite frankly, because what I said earlier about Juliana basically setting the tone for others that try to immigrate, I really do believe that that's going to be an issue. I think she's burned the ladder behind her, really.
I think what she refers to is wrong is how she then refers, oh, well, children can't prove that their worth and their value, so why should I?
That's because they're from here and you're not. Anyway.
No, about children immigrating to New Zealand.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But children just can't immigrate to New Zealand anyway. Like, you can't, as a child, you can't just, even like a healthy, just abled child couldn't just immigrate on their own. So that argument of a disabled child trying to show their worth is void as well, like on that level, because that child would have to come into this country on the grounds of their parents being valid.
For me, I mean, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but for me, it's not actually about the cost. So I see that every country plays a global citizen role. There are people that we're going to open the door to because of things like war and other reasons for asylum. I get it. And as a citizen of New Zealand, to a certain extent, I welcome the idea of asylum. This lady is not seeking asylum. She just wants to chill here. And for that, I just can't jam. Over on D-Live, we actually have a comment. Over on D-Live, True North says, this story makes me sad. Very much a fighter and good for her, but she should have never had to have gone through that. Thank you, True North, over on D-Live.
I think what maybe should have been clear to her is actually the process from the beginning, because it is a process and it wasn't about her disability, it's about the immigration process for New Zealand, and every country has an immigration process. And if I just want to visit certain places now around the world, I cannot get a visa just to visit certain places because that is their policy. So that's the interesting thing. And yeah, so just before I took off my headphones, that is completely, I know of a situation where a person's immigrated with their family. And that's exactly it. They can't prove their worth. They've come with their family, and when they've come up to residency, she's then gone and compared herself to that kind of situation.
So just for the sake of time, I think I'm trying to find all the articles you had for me, Hannah. I just want to see if this was the one that I actually wanted. Oh, we had another one about what you should tell your kids about disabilities. I think I'll stick with the Johnny Wilkinson article, Simon. So we'll head to that one now. I'll just make sure it's on view for everyone. So Johnny Wilkinson, and I actually know this guy. disabled community in shadows of the election lead up. Now, I'm not gonna read this out. One, because I'm black. Two, because it's not gonna be really interesting for me to read it out. But Simon has had a little bit of opportunity to look at the premise of this, and I put it in the chat for everybody at home to follow along. Simon, Johnny is basically saying that no matter what happens, disability is not a sexy topic for politicians. Do you agree?
I agree in that in the lead up to elections, nothing is sexy except for things that make good headlines and 6 o'clock news bulletins. He, talks about what is it? Labour campaigning on the no fees for paywave transactions. And I've seen so many different policies announced by parties, and then it'll be like the Greens or Māori Party will be like, so awesome to see this party finally adopting our proposed policy, and it's like, oh, so this thing that they're announcing as part of their campaign was announced years or months ago and was first initiated by a different party. They've just taken it now as, to try and boost their election stock, their capital. It's like nothing is a sexy issue that's worth its salt, You know
what is sexy? Taxes. And it's like this circular argument about raising or lowering. And they raise and lower by mere cents, depending on the tax bracket. I don't know. I don't know if we can ever get beyond just playing with the tax. I don't know if we can ever get beyond sort of this investment, 300 million for this, 300 million for that. Why don't we just let people keep their money, do you think?
Well, we've had this discussion.
Yeah, I know we have.
Before. And my position on it is that the current state of our infrastructure and society is not meeting the needs of the people. And I don't think we're going to get there by reducing the amount of money our government takes. I don't think there are the community-led initiatives present that will fix what is wrong with our society. I don't think any sort of neighborhood group is going to fix that our hospitals are decades old, or that our schools are rotting, or that our roads are falling apart, or that there's not enough houses in the country. There's none of that is going to be fixed by giving our individuals more money. I think we will achieve it by taxing the right things appropriately. So I think income taxes should go up. Like our highest income tax bracket is at 180k and it's 39%, where some other countries it's up around 70%, the highest tax bracket. And we don't even tax any income made from selling houses. I've had this discussion with my mate who's just recently become a real estate agent. I don't think housing should be an investment market. I don't think people.
We can agree on that. We can definitely agree on that, Simon. I'm really there. I mean, I'm into capital. I'm into acquiring capital and growing capital. I just don't. New Zealand is too much geared into the bricks and mortar. There are other places where we could be making really strategic investments. I mean, look at the IT sector for New Zealand. We're leaders in the IT space. We're leaders in the computer graphics space with Weta Workshop. We invent some of the technologies required for the entertainment industry. Like we literally invent it. But I personally wouldn't have a clue how to take my money over to Weta and say, I like what you're doing, let me buy a piece. but I do know how to buy a house and how to game the mortgage system. It's really sad. Sorry, I cut you off though. I just wanted to.
No, yeah, no, you followed on from me quite nicely, I think. And what I wanted to finish on was what you talked about in capital, is that I think we should tax those capital gains better than not doing it at all, which is what we currently are doing. You know, you buy a house, like there was stories in the newspaper of people buying a home, selling it in the same afternoon for hundreds of thousands of dollars more to a buyer that they'd already organized before they'd bought the house in the first place.
Wow.
Like, that money is not earned with any sort of smarts or nous. You know, it's just totally opportunistic. It is.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
It doesn't speak to the domestic product of our country, I think, is what you're trying to say, and what I would absolutely agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So going back to Johnny's article, I mean, he makes the point that what it's really about is cupcakes and babies. Are you expecting that cupcakes and babies are going to be the center of the upcoming elections?
Well, no, I still think COVID will be the centerpiece. There's no getting around that. If you discount, no, see, you can't even really discount COVID. Everything that people will announce will have a COVID lens. You know, investment in small businesses to cope with the COVID loss of revenue. Education investment to help deal with the costs of teaching in a COVID landscape. I see it just touching everything, because it's a free win at this point. You know, if you say you're addressing this thing that is cripple ups, excuse me, I don't want to use.
No, you're fine. This is free speech, and we're friends. It's all good.
Has caused a massive detriment to the world over. It's a free win. You say, look, this is going to fix COVID, or you know, it's going to fix some of the impacts of COVID. I think that will be the biggest part of this election. A few kisses on, because you can't even kiss a baby, right? Because of the restrictions
you
on social
can't
distancing.
right now.
No.
Like Jacinda's main what do you call it? Main strategic tactic is to hug accordingly to the right, the conservatives. They just say Jacinda gives out hugs and wins votes. Well, she can't keep doing that. So we'll see whether what they said is true.
Are you saying that Labour might actually come with some policy, Simon?
No, I don't. I don't think so.
Hey, look, we probably need to wrap up soonish, but I wanted to come back to what you said about needing to tax to support people. You know, and I'd accept tax revenue is probably really handy in a COVID environment, but surely within your lifetime you've heard ministerial announcements about spend that you've not been happy with. Yes or no?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's kind of my paradox. It's sort of like I don't get to decide where millions of dollars get spent, but I know that somewhere through my hard work and labour, my money is mixed up in all that. I don't want it mixed up in whatever program this, whatever program that. You know what I mean? So how do you reconcile that for yourself?
It's a bit of Stockholm syndrome. It's looking out into what else is possible and thinking this is probably the best we can do for now until there is a way that we can stop operating on a party level and push forward into just individual policy. Like, we have quarterly voting polls, and it's the latest policy that's up for selection. You have the people in charge of designing it and debating it, and you have these select committees, and then you say, right, this is on the ballot for this quarter. Everybody goes to the voting booth and you vote on whether those policies are enacted, and maybe we get something closer to what you're after. But if we don't have that, I mean, what I said before, I don't see a way as private citizens we could organize our money better than what the government is currently doing.
Oh, Jesus, you really believe that?
I haven't seen it
Yeah.
demonstrated anywhere else. Like, I don't see it happening anywhere else in the world.
Okay. And now, I don't want
I'm
you
open to it, though.
I don't want you to tell me because it's not that kind of question, but I just want to ask, do you know who you're voting for yet?
Yep, I know my party vote. I've just moved. Oh, am I? Because I'm on the multi-electorate roll. I'm not sure.
Oh,
which,
wow. So,
I'm not sure which
you
multi-electorate
kind
I'm
of,
in. If I'm in,
your
I
options
think
are
I'm.
more limited, or?
Yeah, severely. Yeah, I don't even know who the candidates are for. I believe I'm in Tamaki Makoto for the multi-electorate.
I'd say that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure where Teitai Tokoro finishes. But yeah, my party vote's pretty locked in.
Cool. Cool. So,
what about yourself?
Yeah, I know where I'm going with my party vote, and I know where I'm going with my electorate. I'm basically giving them both to the same place, and looking forward to supporting a party that runs on facts and analysis as opposed to hugs and kisses. Yeah, really looking forward to supporting something like that. But Simon, we're probably at the end of it, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna have to have you back sooner rather than later. I'm wondering if we might be able to pencil you in next week or something, because we didn't argue enough for my liking.
Yeah, unfortunately, we did agree too much on some things. I had a couple good points for that Forbes article, so maybe we can throw it in our next discussion. Because I had a few laughs reading that article.
So not putting you on the spot with like a firm commitment, but in a week's time, what do you think? You'll be able to come back?
I think so. Probably the same time next week.
That'd be awesome.
Probably the best chance. Yeah.
Awesome. So, for right now, that's all from me. Thank you all for watching. I will say, Simon, we had a whole lot of sleepers today on the stream. We had the views, but not the comments. So I wonder what's behind that.
Yeah, maybe a couple of shy people. Maybe they don't have the account, so they can't comment.
Yeah.
Newbies stopping by. All good. We're enough discussion for the both of us, aren't we?
Yep. So, just before we end, did you want to make any sort of final comments on the night?
I've enjoyed myself, so thank you for having me, as always. It's a pleasure to see you both and engage in some discussion that I don't really get anywhere else, so it's always healthy, just for my own well-being. I think I might have to come with some articles of my own to discuss.
Definitely.
Hey man, let's do that.
Yeah. And for the audience, if you're in Aotearoa, vote. I don't care who you vote for, just vote. And let's redesign the whole way we live, because it sucks.
I think that's a fair summation, actually, my good friend. So I'm just going to switch back to the camera scenes of me and Hannah. For right now, guys, that's all we've got time for, really. I wanna give a big shout out to Simon for coming along this evening. I enjoy discourse. I enjoy unpacking conversations like this. We will be uploading this to YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below what you thought about the discussion today. Let us know which side of the fence you sit on as far as the opinions you heard today. But for now, thank you for being a part of the channel. Thank you for being a part of the journey.
Please stay awesome, and we'll see you guys in the next one.